rain fell in heavy, relentless sheets over the narrow streets of Zagreb, bouncing off the cobblestones and pooling in the gutters, reflecting the dim, flickering streetlights. I stood under the awning of our apartment building, my jacket soaked, my mind racing with disbelief. The call from the hospital had come just past midnight, shattering the fragile calm I had tried to maintain all evening. My wife, Anna, had brushed off my anxiety earlier, calling me paranoid and overreacting. But now, with the sound of the emergency line still echoing in my ears, I knew something had gone horribly wrong. The hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic and fear when I arrived. A cold, sterile contrast to the warm apartment I'd left behind. Nurses moved like ghosts, their expressions tight, voices low. Dr. Pavlich, an older man with graying temples and sharp eyes, stepped out from behind a sliding door. "Mr. Kovac," he said, his tone clinical yet heavy with unspoken weight. "We have a situation." "What happened?" My voice cracked, betraying the calm I had tried to force. He hesitated. And in that pause, the fragments of my suspicions aligned like shards of glass in my mind. "It's your father," he said finally. "There's been an accident, head trauma, severe. We're doing everything we can." My father, Milan, had always been a fortress of pride and secrets, a man who ruled our family with a stern hand, his words capable of both protection and cruelty. Over the years, I had tried to bridge the gap between us, but the fractures ran deep, threaded through decades of disappointment, betrayal, and unspoken resentments. My mind raced backward, tracing the breadcrumbs of past conflicts, the inheritance dispute, the humiliating confrontation at the town council years ago, the whispered accusations from my mother, who had died under mysterious circumstances a decade prior. And now this. My father's life teetering on a knife edge. Anna appeared at my side, her presence cold and distant, the way she always had been when faced with family drama. "You're panicking again," she said softly, but the words were laced with impatience. "It's not the end of the world. They're doctors. Let them do their job." I wanted to slap the calm from her face, wanted to shake her and demand that she see the truth, the dangerous lattice of deceit and neglect that had always surrounded my father. But the hospital walls seemed to swallow my anger, and I forced myself to nod, following Dr. Pavlich to the ICU. The room was dim, the machines beeping in rhythm with uncertainty. Milan lay unconscious, his face pale, eyes shut as if he were merely sleeping. Yet every bruise and contusion screamed danger. I reached for his hand, and for a fleeting moment, the memory of my childhood came rushing back. His hands gentle when he taught me to ride a bicycle, yet capable of cold discipline when I faltered in his expectations. My chest tightened. Love and resentment had always been intertwined in our household, impossible to separate. Days passed in a haze of sterile corridors, whispered consultations, and sleepless nights. Anna remained aloof, often disappearing for hours under the pretext of errands. Yet I knew she carried a secret. There were phone calls she took in the hallway, her expression unreadable. And every time I pressed her, she dismissed it with a practiced smile. The tension gnawed at me, sharper than the worry from my father. Something was festering in the background, a silent conspiracy I could not yet name. It was during one of these restless nights that I discovered the truth. Milan had survived the accident, but only barely. His injuries were extensive, and his recovery would be slow. In the solitude of his hospital room, I sifted through the fragments of his life. The medical records, the insurance documents, and a letter I found tucked in his wallet, yellowed and folded. It was from Anna, addressed not to me, but to him. The words were clinical, calculating, almost surgical in their precision. He is too volatile, too attached to the past. We must ensure the inheritance is secured. He cannot recover fully. Timing is everything. I felt the room tilt, the gravity of betrayal crushing me. Anna, the woman I had trusted, had orchestrated the accident that nearly killed my father. The realization shattered something fundamental in me, a mixture of horror and fury. Every moment she had dismissed my concerns, every accusation of overreaction, had been a calculated performance. I had been blind, and my family, my bloodline, was under siege from within. The days that followed became a labyrinth of careful observation and strategic silence. I watched Anna, noting her routines, her gestures, the subtle manipulations she employed to control those around her. Friends and colleagues seemed enchanted by her charm, unaware of the ruthless precision beneath it. She was the spider, and we were all caught in her web. I confronted Milan quietly one afternoon, the room heavy with the scent of antiseptic and sun-filtered warmth. "Do you know what she's planning?" I asked, voice low, tense. His eyes, once sharp and commanding, flickered with confusion and pain. He was weakened, physically and mentally, yet there was a spark that refused to die. I think I sensed something, he admitted, but I never imagined she'd go this far. His words, faltering yet sincere, steeled my resolve. Revenge was no longer abstract, it was necessary. For my father, for the dignity of our family, for the generations of secrets and betrayals that had shaped our lives. I began with careful precision. Anna trusted her ability to manipulate, her hubris blinding her to the subtle shifts in power. I created situations that tested her, small exposures that hinted at her duplicity. Anonymous messages to colleagues, rearranged documents, whispers in the right ears. Each move was calculated to provoke, to observe, to destabilize. I kept my own hands clean, my demeanor calm, hiding the storm brewing beneath the surface. The psychological chess game intensified when she noticed the changes. Her charm, once effortless, faltered. I saw her patience fray, the calculated mask slipping in private moments. I fed on these cracks, amplifying them with strategic pressure until the cracks became fissures. One night, I found her reviewing old hospital records, the same ones she had manipulated months ago, her face a mixture of anger and fear. "You think you're clever?" she whispered, not realizing I was behind her. "This will ruin everything." "It already has," I replied quietly, the calm in my voice sharper than any scream. "You underestimated what family loyalty can drive a man to." The climax came one rainy evening, the sky low and heavy over the city. Milan, though still fragile, insisted on attending a family gathering at our ancestral home in the outskirts of the city. It was a pretense, a chance to confront Anna in a controlled environment. Guests arrived, unaware of the storm about to unfold, the old stone manor echoing with polite laughter and clinking glasses. I maneuvered Anna to the center of the room, subtly revealing her manipulations through a series of discreetly timed confrontations. Whispered confessions caught on recording, carefully placed documents, and the unmasking of her lies to influential family members. Her composure cracked, first in micro-expressions, then in outright rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed, but her threats fell flat against the weight of evidence and the scrutiny of those she had deceived. The family, once under her sway, recoiled in disbelief and anger. Milan, though weak, watched with a vindicated gaze, pride and relief mingling in his eyes. By the time the evening ended, Anna's position was irreparably damaged. She left the manor under a storm of accusations, her carefully constructed world collapsing. I stood by the window, rain streaking the glass, and finally allowed myself to breathe. Revenge had not been sweet. It had been a precise, methodical reclaiming of power, a restoration of what had been stolen. But it came with its own cost. Sleepless nights, moral compromise, and the bitter realization that family bonds, once fractured, may never fully heal. In the weeks that followed, Milan's recovery continued, slow and uncertain. I repaired what I could of the family's honor, but the echoes of Anna's betrayal lingered, a permanent scar etched into the fabric of our lives. Yet, in the quiet of our ancestral home, among the rain-soaked streets of Zagreb, I found a strange solace. The truth had emerged, the conspiracies unraveled, and for the first time in decades, I felt the weight of the family's legacy in my hands. Not as a burden, but as a responsibility to protect what remained. And though the shadows of betrayal would always linger, the bonds forged through survival and steadfastness now offered a fragile yet resilient light. The midnight call had been a warning, a fracture in the facade of safety. Anna had believed she could manipulate life itself to serve her ambitions. She had misjudged the depth of blood, loyalty, and vengeance that could rise in a man defending the family he loved, even when that love had been tested, twisted, and betrayed. And in that reckoning, we found the fragile equilibrium of justice, tempered not by law, but by the relentless force of familial devotion. The rain finally eased outside, leaving the city washed and glistening under the first hesitant dawn. And I understood with a quiet certainty, some wounds may never heal, but some battles, if fought with patience and resolve, can reclaim the very soul of a family.